Welcome to The Explainer. This is where we take big, complex ideas and, well, we make them make sense. And today, we've got a really wild one for you. We're going to unpack a text that really, it just challenges everything we think we know about physics and time. It's proposing a whole new way of looking at things, and it's built on logic, cosmology, and, you guessed it, faith.
Okay, so let me throw a wild idea at you. What if religion wasn't just inspired? What if it was engineered? Our source text kicks things off with this really provocative question. Could humans from the future, maybe trying to save us from ourselves, have traveled back in time to give us religion as a kind of guide? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But believe me, the author's response? Well, it's not what you'd expect.
And when I say it's not what you'd expect, I mean he doesn't even entertain it. Not for a second. He just shuts it down, immediately and forcefully. He calls it, and I'm quoting here, the ravings of a madman. Wow. So yeah, that kind of blunt rejection, it's really the starting pistol for a deep dive, a total deconstruction, not just of time travel, but of how we even think about knowledge in the first place.
Okay, so to really get where he's coming from, we need to understand a really important distinction he makes. It's about two different ways of knowing. And for him, this isn't just about wordplay. No, this is the absolute key to unlocking how he sees reality.
So he draws this really sharp line between two concepts, zeka and akal. Think of zeka as your brain's hardware. It's that raw, innate intelligence, right? The sheer processing power you're born with. But akal, that's the software. It's true wisdom. And he argues you don't just have it. You cultivate it through life, through experience, and this is the crucial part for him, it's perfected by faith. So in his worldview, you've got this powerful engine, your intellect, but it's wisdom, this akal, that has to be in the driver's seat.
And who does he use as his prime example? None other than Albert Einstein. I mean, talk about going for the big guns, right? He basically says, look, Einstein had off-the-charts zeka, just a massive, powerful intellect. But, he argues, that incredible intellect wasn't guided or tempered by what he calls true wisdom, by akal, which for the author is always linked to faith.
All right, so now that we have that framework in mind, intellect versus wisdom, let's see how he applies it to the whole time travel thing. He builds his case against going back to the past on two main pillars. One is based on simple logic, and the other, well, that one comes from scripture.
So first up, he kind of gives a nod to the classic logical problems we've all heard of, like the grandmother paradox. If you go back in time and, whoops, stop your grandma from meeting your grandpa, how are you ever born to go back in the first place? It's a classic brain bender. But honestly, he doesn't spend much time on it, because in his mind, the debate is already over. It's been settled, somewhere else entirely.
And that's because his main evidence, his real trump card, comes straight from the Quran. He points to verses like this one, where you have people facing judgment and they're begging, pleading to go back to their old lives and do things over. Now, for the author, this isn't just poetic language or a metaphor. He sees it as a fundamental statement about the actual physics of time.
And he doesn't stop there. He keeps building his case, citing another verse that echoes that same exact feeling, that deep regret, that desperate wish for a second chance. And what he's doing here is really clever. He's stacking these quotes up to show that this isn't a one-off idea. He's arguing that this theme of time being a one-way street, that it's final. It's literally woven into the fabric of the scripture.
But this next verse, for the author, this is the slam dunk. The final word, the plea to be sent back is met with a direct and explicit no. And again, he insists this isn't a symbol or a story. He's arguing it's a direct, divine statement about how our universe works. The past is sealed, game over.
So you see the crucial point he's making, right? From his perspective, this isn't a problem for theoretical physicists to puzzle over in a lab. The case is already closed. The verdict is in, handed down by a divine text. So for him, if a scientific theory comes along that says you can go back to the past, well, that theory is just plain wrong. Why? Because it contradicts what he sees as a higher absolute truth.
Okay, so he's basically locked the door on traveling to the past, saying scripture makes it impossible. But what about the future? Well, to tackle that, he has to go head-to-head with one of the most famous, most foundational principles in all of science.
And he makes this incredibly bold, just audacious claim. He says that Einstein's theory of relativity has a fundamental flaw. That the speed of light, the one thing we're always told is the ultimate speed limit of the universe, yeah, he says it's not the limit, not even close.
And he doesn't just pull this out of thin air. He's got 2 lines of evidence to back it up. The first one is actually from modern cosmology. He points out that the fabric of the universe itself is expanding faster than the speed of light. And his second piece of evidence, you guessed it, he goes back to Scripture, arguing that it was describing time as a relative concept centuries before Einstein ever came along. He zeroes in on these verses that describe a single day from a divine perspective as being like 1,000 or even 50,000 of our human years. Now, most people might read that as poetry, right? A metaphor. But not him. He interprets it as a literal description of physics, just on different planes of existence. And his conclusion? Time isn't absolute at all.
So let's just remember the number we all know. 300,000 kilometers per second. It's the famous C in E equals mc squared. It's the bedrock of so much of modern physics, Einstein's cosmic speed limit.
But then, get this, the author does his own math. He takes that idea of time relativity from Scripture, combines it with what we know about the size of the universe, and calculates what he says is the minimum speed for angels or divine beings. And the number he comes up with is just staggering. 570 billion kilometers per second.
I mean, just look at that comparison. On this scale, the speed of light is just a blip. It barely even registers. The speed he's calculated, based on his unique blend of Scripture and cosmology, paints a picture of a universe where the laws of physics as we know them are just a tiny, tiny piece of a much, much bigger puzzle.
So, okay, he's dismantled time travel, he's challenged the speed of light, so what's the point of all this? Where does it all lead? Well, he brings all these different threads together into one single core principle for how we should understand the universe.
His central idea is something he calls to look with the light of faith. Essentially, he's proposing that scientific facts and our own logical reasoning can only take us so far. He believes that to really solve the deepest mysteries, to see the true nature of reality, you have to start with a framework of faith. You have to look at the world through that lens first.
And see, this brings us right back to where we started. For him, that raw intellect, that zakah, can lead you to create theories that, in his view, are just fundamentally flawed, like relativity. He says true understanding, real clarity, only happens when that powerful intellect is guided by akal, that special wisdom that's lit up by faith. For him, that is the only correct context for all knowledge.
And so in the end, the author's whole argument leaves us with a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? He's presenting a worldview where Scripture doesn't just sit alongside science. No, it sets the rules. It draws the boundaries that science has to operate within. And that really challenges us, you and me, to think about which lens we should use as our ultimate guide to reality, the lens of scientific observation or the lens of revealed text.